Thank you. Let me call to order this special meeting of the City of Bloomington Planning Commission for April 5th, 2021. Let's begin by calling the roll.
Whistler?
Here.
Kinsey? Here. St. John?
Here.
Burrell?
Here.
Herrera?
Here.
Seabour?
Here.
Cockrum?
Here.
Sandberg?
Here.
And Kate.
Here.
And Enright Randolph is ill, so he will not be joining us today. It's better.
Okay, so we do have a quorum and we will continue with our business. At our last meeting, we continued the final petition on our agenda, which is ZO-10-21. We continued that to next meeting. So the way that we'll proceed here tonight is we'll begin with a staff presentation on ZO-10-21, and then we will go right into amendments. We do already have 6 amendments that have been submitted either by staff or by commissioners to consider tonight. Assuming that those amendments are all moved and seconded, we have quite a bit of business ahead of us tonight. As you'll recall, in our meetings previously, we've been able to get through 1, maybe 2 amendments in a meeting. So getting through 6 tonight seems like a pretty tall order, but I'd like to give it our best shot. Seeing as how we've got that many to consider, I think that limiting public comment on these amendments would probably be a good idea. I think we definitely want to keep the public comment for the final passage on our final recommendation on the petition, as we did on previous petitions, to 5 minutes, but would welcome a little bit of discussion or a motion if we felt like we wanted to limit the public comment on the amendments themselves to something a little shorter.
I'd motion to allow or suspend our normal public comment on the amendments and make it 2 or 3 minutes, and still allow the public comment on the full petition to be 5. Is there a
Okay, we gotta pick one. 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I think either one is probably appropriate, but since you're making the motion, I'll let you choose, or you can say 2.5 minutes.
yeah, the compromise. Yeah, we did 3 last time, so that might be appropriate just to kind of keep with what we've been doing.
Okay, so your motion is to suspend the rules to limit public comment to 3 minutes per speaker on the amendments only.
Correct.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Jackie, let's call the roll on that, please.
Great. Kinsey?
Yes.
St. John?
Yes.
Burrell?
Yes.
Herrera?
Yes.
Seabour?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
And Whistler?
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, so the rules are suspended and public comment will be 3 minutes per speaker on the amendments only, remain at 5 minutes per speaker when we get to our final recommendation. Before we jump into that business, is there any other, any reports or communications from commissioners or from staff? Let me start with Commissioner Herrera. Go ahead.
Right. So just to let you know in the audience that I will be for the first 25 minutes until 5:55. I have a university commitment, but I will return as soon as the ceremony, faculty ceremony ends, just to let you all know, and thank you for your comprehension.
Thank you. Additional reports or communications. Commissioner St. John.
Just a real quick clarification. I had someone in the public reach out to me. I know that the packet for this meeting is the same as the packet for April 1st. And I know it even actually says that, but I think maybe just stating that out loud, that for people who didn't quite get that we're working off the
Sure.
packet on the website. Jackie, you might want to.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yes, the full information for ZO 1021 was in the packet from the first. So it says on the website, if you're interested in that information for tonight, to access that packet. It has extra information because it has the information about 09 as well, but it has all the information. And then there's also an additional link under that date for the amendments that have been proposed. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, any additional reports or communications from commissioners or from staff before we jump right in? All right, Jackie, are you ready to make the staff presentation on ZO 1021?
Sure.
Take it away.
Just a sec. Share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen? So tonight we are discussing the last of the 10 petitions that we brought forward as far as related to the update of the official zoning map, as well as text amendments. This is, I feel like we've said this a lot, but this is part of the final step of the process to update and align Bloomington's land use regulations and map with the shared visions and goals that were outlined in the 2018 comprehensive plan. So that is what we are talking about, the map tonight. The text amendments have all been moved forward to the council level. So the zoning map was created through use of obviously looking at the comprehensive plan. We looked at a number of different types of community data and obviously input. We started a public process in October of last year, went to numerous neighborhood association and council hosted meetings to take input directly from the public, as well as having numerous ways for them to communicate with us online and via email. And went to several other meetings, and then of course hosted our own public interest, public information meetings through that process as well. We also, of course, applied our professional planning principles and came up with a map that we think best applies the updated UDO regulations and furthers the goals of the comprehensive plan. So the petition updates are as follows. There were new districts put into the UDO in the 2019-2020 update. So we mapped those. Those were always intended to be mapped, but we're not done with the conversion map, of course, because no lines were changed. And then we also located numerous parcels in the city that may have been split zoned, or the use on the property or likely future use because of changes to the property or the surroundings no longer matched what the zoning district indicated. And so we cleaned up some of those as well, or proposing to clean those up. We also proposed to rezone 102 plan unit developments of our 119 that we have to base zoning districts for ease of knowing what can be done there by the property owners, as well as to follow along with what the zoning code has prescribed for how long PUDs can remain on the books after they are developed, or if not developed at all. And then we also looked at, of course, the area surrounding the existing hospital. In the interim, from when the conversion map was done to now, the Bloomington Hospital Site Redevelopment Master Plan was approved. And so we tried to match districts to that plan. And then we also were rezoning most of our employment parcels to mixed use employment, allowing further development in those areas. So here is the zoning map. There is an interactive map on the project web page. It has been up since February. This is the same map. There's also a static map there, a PDF map that you could use for printing. And then this story map will go up on the website after this hearing as well. So you can use this to access those same resources, but basically you can use the map to zoom into your property. You can search by address and find out what properties of interest that you have are planned to be zoned. So as I mentioned, there are a number of new zoning districts. The first is parks and open space. We previously, all of our parks were zone institutional, which is the district that is also for our government-owned properties, including Indiana University. So we decided to add a district of its own for the parks properties so that the types of uses and developments that are desired there could be more easily done, as the regulations that apply to a more traditional building site may not apply to a park setting. So you can see here in green, those areas that we are proposing to be zoned to parks and open space. Again, areas owned by City of Bloomington as official parks, and then a couple of other areas that we own as well. And then the city parks located in the downtown district were left because their character overlays have additional standards that we felt were appropriate to leave in those locations. The next new zoning district that we have is mixed use student housing. So this went into the, as well as parks and open space, this went into the code in the 2019-2020 update. The idea of the mixed use student housing zoning district was to identify areas in town that may be appropriate for what we in Bloomington have traditionally thought of as student housing. Over the years, where those types of developments should be located, the ideas about that have changed. In the past, they have been pushed to the edges. Then they were encouraged downtown, and in the latest comprehensive plan, explicitly says that those types of uses should not be located in the downtown area, and identifies a couple or identifies a specific area called Gateway North, which is along North Walnut, and also that student housing should be located in close proximity to campus. And so we took those guiding principles and mapped these areas. So first we have the Gateway North area that then extends to campus to the east. And you can see that here in the center. We also have some existing student housing developments here on the west side of Miller Showers Park that will probably develop in the lifetime of this code. And so we included those as well. And so this area will allow, again, those regulations that were already put into the code for mixed use student housing, including allowing developments with 4 and 5 bedroom units, and also developments with more than a third 3 bedroom units to be able to go in by right in these areas as long as they can meet the requirements, where those bedroom mixes are not allowed in other areas of town anymore. That, if you've been a follower of the Planning Commission for a long time, was often discussed in the 2000s as kind of a key for student housing, was the units with a lot of bedrooms created the most issues. And so those are going to be centralized in areas located near campus. So we have this area to the north. We also identified the Urban Village Center here, which you can see located at 10th and Indiana. And a third area that we have added is existing multifamily east of the new hospital site, because that obviously will be a hospital, but is also a teaching learning center. And because of the ages of those developments, again, similar to those areas west of Miller Showers, will likely redevelop in the lifetime of this code and could be appropriate for more density and student living. So you can read more about, again, we're not proposing to change any regulations for the mixed use student housing. Those are all existing in the code, only mapping those areas. And then we have R4 residential urban. You will probably recall that this was one of the more controversial mappings that we did in the public outreach draft. And so what you can see here is in the tan is what is left over. What we are currently proposing. This is about 75% smaller than what we proposed initially. What we decided to base the original proposal on largely on lot size and go from there. So we created clusters throughout the community where we could identify numerous R4 size parcels and then build on those. That was not our most popular tactic that we have done to map. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board based on public input. And something we heard a lot was that people really expected that these areas would be placed on the edges of existing neighborhoods and in the historic part of town especially. So what we have done here, you can see, is try to spread these opportunities throughout town in that there are PUDs that are sized for R4 that have appropriate dimensional standards for the R4 district. So we included those, as well as identifying areas in the historic neighborhoods of Bloomington, along the edges, along major roadways or the perimeters of those neighborhoods, between the neighborhood and greater, a more intense zoning district, and identified those small pockets to allow for the uses in R4, which do, of course, still allow for single family, but also do allow for units of greater density. So those areas are what you see included here. And then this one is the, let me see if I can move this just a second, R1 large lot zoning district. These are based on ordinance that you saw, excuse me, a petition that you previously saw. The R1 and the RE have been, the RE will no longer be mapped. That's our existing zoning district, state residential. Those will now all be, in theory, if this is to be approved, those will all be R1 lots. So you can see those located here in tan. As we said when we were doing the text amendment, there aren't a large number of areas for that zoning district, but they do allow our largest lot size. And we included in the text amendment all of the uses from RE. So the focus on allowing urban agriculture to maybe an intenser degree than some of the other areas is still included. And again, not a huge amount of land for the city, but a district that is could be useful in the future for annexation if that were to happen, as well as allowing some of these larger lots right now to match a district that that matches uses and could possibly still be developed further in the future. And then these enhancement and adjustment rezones are the ones that I mentioned earlier. Just through working with the code and working with members of the public, staff has been for a while identifying areas that have split zone lots or areas where the character of the area has changed so much that the zoning that was in place no longer makes sense, and keeping track of those. And so we put those together here. Let's see. We can zoom in. Oh, hold on, sorry. Oops. Okay, so you can see, again, those are kind of corrections or areas, again, that we think make more sense, changes that aren't basically precipitated by one of the other changes like the plan unit development change or the new zoning district. These are kind of the other changes that were made. And so you can see that those happen here on the east side of campus, increasing some density, opportunities just to multifamily in areas where that may exist as well here to the north of downtown. And then some areas along corridors as well. We have changed some multifamily along the new 7-line, planned 7-line between campus and downtown to more of a mixed use focus, anticipating potential further development there in the future as well. Okay, and then the plan unit developments are, as I said, we have 119 plan unit developments. As the ordinance goes, that's a lot because we should be checking them every year or so, and those that are fully developed should then be rezoned to their base districts that are most closely associated. And so we are trying to catch up with that process. Ryan, can you clarify for me? I know I've asked this a million times. This is 102 or 103?
103.
103. Sorry, the other one was a typo. It's 103. So we started by gathering information about the PUDs. So we reviewed information included but not limited to the initial year of approval, the allowed uses on that site, underlying zoning at the time that it was rezoned to PUD, surrounding zoning now, last year of approved petition, and surrounding uses as well. And after we gathered that information, we looked at the PUDs to try to determine if they met any of these thresholds, which included at least a 95% of the PUD being built out, or whether or not the PUD should have been considered to be abandoned if nothing had happened there, in which case it would need to be rezoned. So we have a lot of PUDs, 119 is a lot, so that's a lot of area. So you can see those here. Again, we are proposing to leave 16 in place. Those that are planning to be left either have recent proposals or are undergoing current development now, or they're new. So for example, we had a Curry PUD at Longview and Pinellas that was approved within the last 18 months. So that will remain a PUD. We have the Trinitas petition that was approved at Arlington Park on 17th, that would remain as a PUD. And then we have other PUDs that are quite old, but that have ongoing development in them. So for example, the Sudbury PUD, we have development going on the southern part of that PUD, including single family and a multifamily that was approved within the last 18 months as well. I believe maybe 2 years, I think 18 months. And then, or the Thompson PUD, we have a petition currently at council that's in that PUD, as well as recently amended by the Habitat Project, and of course, the ongoing construction and expansion at Catalent, that's all in that PUD. So if the PUDs are kind of living and working, we left those. If they're very complicated, if they have complicated regulations, such as the Renwick PUD, we left those as well. Everything else, if it seemed to meet the 95% build out, or had been fallow for some time, we are proposing to change those to a base zoning district that most closely relates to its uses and development standards. So again, this information is on the website, on the public outreach website, and we will post this as well after this hearing, and you can find more detailed information about PUDs if you're interested. So as Mr. Whistler mentioned, we have various amendments. Oh, this doesn't seem to be working quite right. Hold on just a second. Let's see if I can make it do it. Okay, the first amendment is actually proposed by staff. When we went live with the new map, we had one member of the public through a neighborhood association meeting indicate that a PUD, which he is the sole owner of, though the PUD calls for uses and dimensions that fit the R4 zoning district, that he was actually no longer interested in developing it in the way that was approved by council. So again, when we tried to recommend zoning districts for the PUDs, we looked at all the characteristics that we could of existing and surrounding areas and tried to look at the uses as well so that the property owners could get the zoning district that most closely is related to their district. So that is up here, and we are proposing to rezone that to R3. That goes with the surroundings. And-
Jackie, so I just
yeah.
also wanted to chime in on that one, that the neighborhood association was very concerned about R4 at the very end of a dead-end street. So they didn't want to see additional density occurring at that property. So that was another factor for that location.
Sure, thank you. So we tried to, as much as we could, look at, again, we initially picked the district that matched the PUD, but then if a property owner, this one in particular, had a concern about that and was no longer interested, then we matched the surrounding areas. So that's this triangle up here. We are proposing R3. And then there is at the Boulders, we should have proposed RM. It is largely multifamily, and just through an error of, I would call it a Scrivener's error, but a computer error, it was zoned R2. And so we would prefer that that be zoned RM, which is way more of the properties in there are multifamily than single family. And of course, single family is allowed in the RM zoning district. And then the last one is, the Habitat property was actually officially put into the Thompson PUD. But in our map draft, we have it as R2, and it wasn't changed to add it into the PUD. So we need to do that because council did that, and we don't want to undo that. That was done within the last year. So those three are kind of corrections or suggestions from staff. And then we have a second amendment from Brad Whistler. This is on Flores Boulevard. The map draft has it shown as mixed use neighborhood, but the PUD actually has very specific standards for what types of uses can be used on this site. And those are basically restricted to medical clinic. So the neighborhood to the east is concerned because they worked with the, through that process, they knew of the limitations and worked with the council and owners on that, and would like to see that restriction move forward in some way. So we, Brad is proposing that those two lots be rezoned actually to mixed use healthcare, which would be more in line with the uses in the PUD. Specifically, it's a larger PUD, so other uses are allowed on the west side of Flores, but for these particular lots, it was definitely limited. Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And so we think that makes sense. Just as a clarifying note, we have heard from a number of people in that neighborhood to the east that they are concerned if this property redevelops that East Homestead Drive would be put through to Flores. That is not on the transportation, on the thoroughfare plan, meaning that couldn't happen. We could not compel someone to do that because those road connections have to be planned out. And that's why when we do have large properties or properties that develop that roads are incorporated, we have to reflect what the thoroughfare plan has planned, and there is no planned connection here. So no planned connection, no redevelopment that we know of, just trying to move to a base zoning district, and we do think that the mixed use healthcare is appropriate. Amendment 3 brought forward by Plan Commissioner Sandberg is to remove the R4 zoning district. So again, here's our R4 map. And so basically those would be removed. This is a little complicated because no zoning districts were proposed for these changes. So in areas of town like the historic neighborhoods where they may be R3 now, that may be the intention is for those to go back. But in places where that are PUD, we would have to designate a district and or designate that those go back to PUD. And obviously this is quite a number of areas. So that may be more complicated to discuss, wiping that completely off of the map. And then let's see. Then these are more specific R4 removals. This is the R4 removal at, we're calling it the Elm Heights R4 removal. It is along Hunter and Jordan. So here is the area you can see here. It is shown to be R4. Some of the reasons are it's one block from Atwater, which is obviously a classified road. higher volume road for this area. It is on the edge of the Elm Heights neighborhood because Atwater is obviously immediately to the north, and then immediately north of that is the mixed use commercial node that is at 3rd and Jordan. So this would be between the neighborhood and that district. The comprehensive plan calls for in the mixed urban residential area that some locations may be able to support increased density, again, on higher volume roads, near major destinations, or near neighborhood edges. Atwater also obviously supports numerous bus lines. And there is some, and we can look, if we get to these amendments, we can look on the map as well. There is multifamily immediately to the north of this as well, and then some further down Hunter. So definitely not entrenched in the neighborhood, as we've heard people asking us not to do, and on the edge of this portion of the neighborhood, and largely rental. We saw in, I believe it was in the amendment packet, that it said it's 1/3 owner, but it's actually not. There are 34 addresses here. Oh, it might be. There are 34 addresses here. 25 of those are rentals. Sometimes we conflate things, and people do own properties and then rent rooms out. So it's possible that some of those, that is happening in this location, as we definitely do have some of those in this area. But 75% of these properties we're recommending are already rentals. And then, so that is located here. Oh, and a comment also on the nature of the buildings. And this will go for pretty much any district where someone is discussing the listing in the local or state survey. We talked about this last time in 2019. If properties are eligible for designation as part of a district or standalone, that is great. And we actually, as a community, very much support that and have quite a few local districts. And then in order to have those protections that come along with being locally designated, you have to locally designate the properties. We do have demolition delay, which would give Historic Preservation Commission more time and some purview were any of the properties that aren't locally designated to be greatly altered or demolished. But as a reason not to allow a land use, we find that listing that a property may or may not be contributing to a future district is not a very heavily weighted reason. As we said in 2019, we do think these neighborhoods, and some of them have, for example, Elm Heights, should gather together and speak to the Historic Preservation Program Manager and petition council if they think that their buildings are unique enough and hold enough historic value to be historically designated. Those things, again, are considered through demolition delay, but the use of the property is not designated by whether or not they could possibly be part of a local district in the future. Okay, let's get to Amendment 5. This is again to remove a portion of the R4 map. So this portion here is on South Washington. It's between 2nd Street and East Dodds. The area supports a few duplexes now. And it also, the one bus runs on South Washington, and is almost entirely surrounded by multifamily zoning or mixed use zoning. Only this block here between Wiley and Dodds has remaining R3. Everything else is existing multifamily or greater intensity zoning. And again, a large portion of rentals in this area that could be used for redevelopment. So for example, between 2nd and 1st, there are 24 addresses and 23 of them are rentals. And again, entirely surrounded by multifamily zoning or commercial. And then between 1st and Dodds, 11 out of 14 are rentals and could be updated or sold or redeveloped without affecting existing owner occupied properties. which is something we've discussed quite a bit. Additionally, again, the information was given that these properties do have some potential designation opportunities. And yes, we think that those types of discussions should be had with the Historic Preservation Program Manager, but are not necessarily a zoning designation question. And then Amendment 6 is the R4 portion along, Hillside, between the commercial along Walnut and the PUD along South Dunn. This portion does have multiple plexes as well, duplexes and greater, a large percentage of rentals, and I think it's 60%. One block from Hillside, which has, 1 block, 300 feet from Hillside, which runs the 7-line bus. It is on the edge of Bryan Park. There is mixed use to the west and multifamily zoning to the south. So again, in the edge of this neighborhood, allowing for some higher density in town, while creating a buffer between the traditional R3 and more intense districts around it. I think sometimes the edge conversation gets confusing because, for example, immediately south of this is multifamily. So we wouldn't necessarily zone multifamily R4, we'd be down zoning it. We're trying to increase opportunity for more units and not less. So for the way that we looked at edges was those areas between the higher density and the bulk of the R3 district. And this block portion is one that we identified here, obviously commercial to the west, and then again, South Dunn PUD to the east with the commercial node, of course, at Hillside and Henderson, or mixed use node, I should say, because it's commercial and residential. Okay, that is what I have. So I'm happy to answer questions, or Brad, if you want to go into amendments, whatever you prefer.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll jump right into the amendments so that we can have a thorough discussion of the petition as amended before we take our final recommendation. So let's begin with amendment number 1. This is essentially the staff amendment with a few corrections in it. Since I'm the one that sponsored this, I'll go ahead and move for its introduction. So I'll move, or for its adoption, I'll move for adoption of amendment number 1. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions for myself or for staff about amendment number 1? Any questions at all? Okay, well then we will go to public comment on amendment number 1. If you are here to make comment, and you'd like to comment on amendment number 1, look to the bottom of your screen, look for the participants tab or the reactions tab. Underneath that, you might find a button that says raise hand. If you click that raise hand button, we'll recognize you when it's your turn to speak, and you will have 3 minutes to make your comment. If you have any trouble finding that button, feel free to send a chat message either to myself or to Jackie Scanlon or Ryan Roebling, and we will do our best to get you recognized. So we'll begin public comment on amendment number 1.
Bill Boss?
Yes. I'm the owner of the property at the end of West 8th Street. And there's quite a bit of misinformation about this. First of all, let me make it clear that I did not say that I intended to abandon the original plan. It hasn't happened. It hasn't all happened yet. Part of it has, but there's still more that I would like to have happen. Number 2, there's more misinformation. Originally, the planning staff had this confused. with another PUD quite some distance to the west of here. They thought this was a completely different property. And I had to correct them when they started speaking to our neighborhood association. Basically, the city planning staff has come up with proposals which are specifically designed to reduce owner occupancy. In Bloomington, duplexes will almost certainly not be owner occupied. So far, I've only been able to find out that there are 2 in the city of Bloomington. The hand department has the records. They could provide that information. It'd be nice if they would, just how many there are. However, there is the question about parking. So let me address that. One of our neighborhood associations did question adding density. If this proposal were to be put through the way my original PUD specified, it would add 4 units to the end of 8th Street, to the last block of 8th Street. By my count, if the city's proposals, including reducing this PUD to R3, if the city's proposals were to be put through, 7 or 8 new units could, and many probably would, be added to the end of 8th Street. So the parking is an issue, but it's not as much of an issue with this plan. So basically, this is an attempt to reduce owner occupancy. The original plan called for 4 condos and a conservation easement in a wooded area that is at the end of 8th Street. The condos would be very amenable to owner occupancy. These are townhouses. However, duplexes are not amenable to owner occupancy. So this is really an attack on owner occupancy. And I noticed that the the single family houses at the other end of our neighborhood are still listed as R4.
Your time is up. Thank you for your comments. Who do we have next, Jackie?
Sorry, Peter?
Yes, hi, Peter Dorfman, the Near West Side. I usually make these comments as an individual citizen of the city. I'm making tonight's comment as the president of the neighborhood association that met with Eric Grulich about this. I'm also the author of a written comment specifically on that far west 8th Street PUD that Bill Baus was just talking about. There are a lot of subtleties here, but I want to speak in support of this amendment because I had pointed out the drawbacks of loading an area which is the far end of a dead-end street with additional density. This amendment, one, would remedy that, and I want to speak in as strongly as possible in favor of Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on Amendment number 1?
Nothing on Facebook.
Okay, seeing none, then we are back to the commission for any additional questions or comments on Amendment number 1. Commissioner Kinsey.
Thank you. I guess this is a question for staff. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to clarify the discrepancy that Mr. Boss identifies associated with this property. Can you help us understand what the discrepancy is and if we should be concerned about this discrepancy?
Sure, Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. No, I can certainly chime in on this one. So we do know exactly what PUD Mr. Baus has. It was a PUD that was approved for a single family house as well as a building that had 5 townhomes in it. So we had proposed to rezone this to the R4 district because of the townhomes that were approved with the PUD. The only thing that has happened within the PUD was the construction of the single family house or the renovation to it. And that happened when the PUD was approved back in 1996. So nothing has happened on this PUD for 25 years. So that was one of the reasons why we identified this PUD as a location to rezone. We had proposed to rezone it to R4 because of the townhomes. When we met with the neighborhood association a week or two ago, there were significant concerns that were raised about the location of an R4 zoning district at the end of a dead-end street and the density that would be located there. So we took those comments back, and that is why we are proposing to rezone this to R3 rather than R4 so that it matches the surrounding zoning.
All right, thank you. Any other? Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Kate. Beth.
I just wanted to follow up, Eric, with a quick question on the R3 zoning. So are townhomes still a possibility to build there if that's desired?
Well, so the townhomes would not be a permitted use within the R3 district as it stands right now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
There, Mr. Dorfman alluded to this a little bit, but I mean, there are other things going on here. That area is very odd. There's a lot of right-of-way over there where I don't know, and Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we look at the 1997 PUD drawing where they're showing the possibility of the units, when we looked into this further, may actually even be in a portion that's right of way. It just doesn't seem that the PUD might be as doable as it once as they once thought it was. Now that, you know, our mapping system is a lot better now. You know, we have the county property lines where they didn't have that at the time. So it looks like we're keeping it as a PUD may not make sense. Eric, am I describing that correctly? I can show the site plan.
I don't have the site plan in front of me. I apologize.
Okay.
But there were some, with the PUD, I believe it showed it as all one property. Oh, there you go.
So
there weren't property lines that were shown on that. So I'm not sure if there's still right of way that exists there.
So yeah, let me see here. Hold on. If you want to give me a second, I can also try to find the, I can show you what it looks like on the aerial, basically. And that design of, that physical design may not actually be possible. Okay. So this is what we have for property lines. Again, these aren't guaranteed. This isn't like surveyed, but this is what is in the auditor's book. There are errors in town. It is possible that some of this is incorrect. But as you can see here, this is the right of way for 8th Street. It goes here. There probably was a street planned here at some time when this was platted, and it goes west as well. And then, so like some of these areas that Mr. Boss has developed, like this large planting area that appears to be in the right of way. This house, these are the 2 houses that you saw on the site plan. And then the townhomes are supposed to be in this area, which appears to have some sort of alley between it. Not that that couldn't be vacated, not that some of these issues couldn't be overcome, but that this is kind of, yeah, but that that doesn't appear, that site plan that was approved 24 years ago doesn't actually appear to match what the available right-of-way or what the available property is here. And rezoning this area to a base district would make that much cleaner for future development. But yes, then the townhomes, if rezoned to R3, the townhomes wouldn't be allowed. We chose R4 so that they could be allowed. So that's kind of where we are. We were under the impression until today that Mr. Baus wanted this to go back, which was supportive of our proposal to change this to R3. So we, either way that you decide, we do think leaving this PUD is probably not buildable as is.
So I'll also point out, that we had recommended rezoning this to R4 when we had looked at rezoning this entire neighborhood to R4. So the R4 was going to match all of the surrounding zoning for this neighborhood. So once that changed to R3 and this became the remnant R4, in addition, it didn't really make sense to have this R4 island at the back of the 8th Street right away.
Yeah, it made sense in that it matched what uses he said he wanted, and we're trying to do that with the PUDs. But it did definitely make the situation different once the rest of the neighborhood went back to R3.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Any other final comments from commissioners on amendment number 1? Okay. Jackie, would you please call the roll then on amendment number 1?
St. John,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Herrera. Oh, I'm sorry, he stepped out. Seabour,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
and Kinsey.
Yes.
Okay, so amendment number 1 is adopted. Moving on to amendment number 2. This is also one that I sponsored. I will move for adoption of amendment number 2. Is there a second?
I second.
I think I see Commissioner Kinsey, second. Yeah, so again, this is, I think Jackie did a great job of explaining this in the intro. It's very simple, that in the original PUD, this particular portion of the PUD was limited to medical use, and therefore, in an effort to make sure that we're, maintaining the closest uses as PUDs are converted to more permanent standard zones. It just made sense for this to be mixed-use healthcare instead of mixed-use neighborhood. I think it was largely just an oversight in the original proposal. So are there any questions from commissioners about amendment number 2? Okay, seeing none, we will go to public comment on amendment number 2. If you would like to make a comment on amendment number 2, please raise your hand by clicking on the participants tab or the reactions tab, and then find the raise hand button. And we will recognize you when it is your turn to speak. You will have up to 3 minutes to make your comments.
Connor Hansen.
Hey y'all, thank you for the time today and allowing me to speak. My name's Connor Hansen and I own the home at 3421 East Homestead Drive in Hoosier Acres. I'm here to speak about the change to the Flores Medical PUD to the proposed mixed neighborhood zone. I'm not in favor of that, and I'm instead in favor of Amendment 2. That property currently has a fully developed medical office. Anything built under the proposed map would be allowable up to 40 feet tall and would look directly into my side yard, as that property borders the entire west side of my lot. I respectfully request that you consider changing the zoning map to mixed use healthcare, as that is most closely aligned with the use that property has had for many years and would be much better than allowing a 40-foot tall building. Again, I'm in favor of Amendment 2. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my
Jackie?
name is,
Sorry, I
Oh.
unmuted someone. Go ahead, Jay Paul.
my name's Eric Paul, and my wife and I, Cindy, live at 1000 South Pleasant Ridge Road. We are actually neighbors with Connor Hansen, and we support amendment number 2 and everything that Connor said.
Thank you.
Barbara Moss.
Hi, I'm Barbara Moss, and I live in Hoosier Acres, and I also would just like to support this amendment. I think it's a really good idea to keep it medical, as it has been, and it works for everyone in the neighborhood and for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment on amendment number 2? Check the chat.
Nothing and nothing on Facebook.
Okay, well, that will conclude public comment on amendment number 2. We are back to the commission for any final comment on amendment number 2. Any final comments? Okay, seeing none, let's call the roll on amendment number 2.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John.
Yes.
Great. 8-0. Thank you.
All right, amendment number 2 is adopted. Next up is amendment number 3. And this one is sponsored by Commissioner Sandberg. Susan, would you like to introduce amendment number
Yes.
3?
Thank you very much. To make it clear, amendment number 3 was meant to be a companion piece to an earlier attempt with the removal of duplexes in R1, R2, R3 to take a pause. That was meant to table the discussion on duplexes in established neighborhoods, core neighborhoods, in order to do a more precise pinpointing of where some of the density actually could be placed that would do no harm to the core neighborhoods. And since that was defeated, I choose not to introduce this amendment tonight. However, the next 3 amendments do, I think, provide some ample proof as to why some of us felt that taking that pause was an important step in determining the good zoning and public policy here. So at this time, I choose not to introduce amendment number 3.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on then to amendment number 4, which is also sponsored by Commissioner Sandberg. Would you like to introduce amendment number 4?
Right, amendment number 4, again, this relates to an Elm Heights area. I want to just say that the next 3 amendments are constituent generated. I was asked to sponsor these amendments on behalf of individuals who live in these neighborhoods. And the explanation for this one was that this area does not meet the criteria for R4. It's not along an arterial, the edges of the neighborhood, or immediately adjacent to more intense zoning districts. And then number 2, that it falls within a historic district meant to protect the architectural character and livability of the neighborhood, which has value for the cultural legacy of Bloomington. And then furthermore, the person who introduced this said the introduction of more density so close to the university will accelerate rental conversion, jeopardizing the care and maintenance of these historic homes and altering the livability of this area. Again, this is amendment 4, and I choose not to introduce that one at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so you choose not to introduce amendment number 4?
That is correct.
Okay, we will move on then to amendment number 5.
Again, this was constituent driven, and this relates to the R4 zone along South Washington between 2nd Street and Dodds. There were a lot of rationales here for the person that suggested this change to me. including that the area is already highly rental and is the best example of historic fabric in the neighborhood. It already contains a larger variety of housing options than R4 zoning would offer, with efficiency apartments, small one-bedroom apartments, duplexes, and room for rent. But again, at this time, I choose not to introduce amendment number 5.
All right, then we are on to the final amendment, amendment number 6. Commissioner Sandberg, would you like to introduce?
This one,
amendment number 6?
Yes, please. This one I will introduce. The description of this area is that it is a proposed R4 district that lays on hillside to Wilson between Walnut and Dunn Street. And this area encompasses 59 fully developed single-family lots, 10 along hillside, but only 4 that face hillside. The other lots are located inside the neighborhood. Again, I'm going to go ahead and introduce this one. There were several photographs of areas along South Grant, Wilson, South Palmer that were quite illustrative of some of the vulnerable infrastructure in that area. And also noted that this particular neighborhood, this is in Bryant Park, it cannot be deemed historic. It cannot be designated very readily because of the amount of rentals already in this neighborhood. And so once again, this would be a discussion on possibly protecting some of the areas along this particular portion in Bryant Park.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, you would like to go ahead and move for adoption of amendment number 6, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second for the motion? We'll need a second if we're going to consider the motion.
And given no second, I offer them only as, again, an illustration as to why many of us felt that it was important to take a pause, and with respect to constituent concerns surrounding some of these more delicate areas, that we are not quite finished with the designating of R4 areas. So again, I respectfully thank everyone for their time and consideration, at least reading through the amendments. And if we don't have a further discussion on it, then I will be quiet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, last call then for a second for the motion to adopt amendment number 6. Okay, so that motion fails for lack of a second. Then that is the final amendment that had been submitted prior to the meeting. Are there any other amendments that commissioners would like to propose before we begin our discussion of ZO 1021 as amended? All right. Well, then let's go back to questions. Are there any questions for commissioners on ZO 10-21 as amended? If there are no questions from commissioners, we'll go back to the public for comment on ZO 1021 as amended. Commissioner Kinsey.
I do have one question that I wonder if the staff could show the permitted uses and offer just a reminder. What is it that we are allowing and permitting in R4 in particular? Or if you want to show the whole R table, is that possible? I kind of think that might help us and remind the public of what we're discussing.
Sure, we can get that queued up. Just take a second.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a minute.
No worries. Well, if you are here to give public comment on this, you can go ahead and get your hand raised if you like. Again, just as a reminder, click the participants button or the reactions button. Look for a button that says raise hand. If you can't find that, just click on the chat and send a chat to me or to Jackie, and we'll make sure to recognize you when it's your turn to speak. We are going to try to get Commissioner Kinsey's question answered before we go to public comment here. Okay.
I think there might be one thing wrong on this, so Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the R4 permitted and conditional use list. I believe that triplexes remain conditional. That was part of our proposal, and I don't think that was changed with the Plan Commission amendment.
That's correct. It just
Okay.
hasn't been updated yet.
Yeah, so that we did not update this. We haven't updated this for council yet. But in the R4, triplex should be in the conditional list, but otherwise these are the types of uses we're discussing. Again, residential uses and those that have end with plex, and also the dwelling multifamily have extensive use specific standards. For example, the dwelling multifamily is a maximum of 8 units. And the plexes are all limited by number of bedroom to match occupancy requirements per unit. And then the other uses you see here are those that are found in also in the R3 types of uses that are protected, such as the group care home, and then other group living situations, again, such as assisted living or nursing convalescent home. And then of course, single family detached and single family attached still totally permitted by right and allowable in that district. So the big change in most of the areas where the R4 is being located, it would be the allowance of conditionally allowing triplex and fourplex. And the 8-unit max multifamily, which I'll clarify, the 8-unit max multifamily is not something that we propose to add. That's already in code and was part of the April 2020 update.
Thank you. I
All right,
appreciate
thank
that
you.
review. Thanks.
Any additional questions from commissioners? All right, then we will go to public comment. And at this stage, we are all debating the petition itself. So the limit is 5 minutes. When Jackie recognizes you, just please state your full name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes to make your comments.
Jean Haley.
Hi, my name is Jean Haley, and I live at 1402 South Grant Street. I am in that corridor that's currently in R4, and I just want to say that it's really disappointing that this amendment was not even seconded and offered up for public discussion. I just think that's really disappointing. I lived in this neighborhood for a long time. I finally bought a house here 6 years ago, and I'm in that one block that is going to get zoned R4. And I'm just really disappointed that we couldn't even discuss that. As Ms. Sandberg said, this is just another, another occasion to look at how our neighborhood voice is not even being listened to. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, Margaret Clements.
Hi, my name is Margaret Clements, and I've been in and around Bloomington since 1979. So, for a good long time, for about more than 40 years. And I'd like to say that I too am disappointed in the process because I have so much respect for the community members of Bloomington and how open and welcoming they have been to diverse communities and how civil they are. And they've demonstrated that throughout this process. But I'm disappointed in the administration and their unwillingness to hear the considered and informed voices of the public. I would like to also say that through all of the amendments that we've been discussing in these last days, that in the name of inclusivity, you have effectively erected an entire town for the recreational and leisure class at the expense of the working class in Bloomington. As someone said at our last meeting, 36,000 people commute into Bloomington to work each day. These people are the backbone of our community. Yet in order to buy into a lifestyle they want at a price they can afford, they are driving further and further away to buy a single family home because you cannot buy that around here anymore. And where they exist, you're changing them to rentals. All you are allowing are multifamily units. So in the name of saving the climate, you are creating more pollution. In the name of inclusivity, you have created a sundown town where the workers are not welcome here after dark. In the name of affordable housing, you are increasing the cost of housing. This plan, this planning department, this community needs to think hard about its supposed values. Nothing you are doing makes any sense and you won't listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Alexander.
Great. Hi, I'm Greg Alexander. Thank you. There's a lot of positive work in the UDO and especially in this map because we really did have a problem before where all multifamily development was effectively happening through PUDs and mapping some districts like the multifamily student really will make a big difference to this commission and their work. However, I'm disappointed that there wasn't an amendment introduced to restore the earlier draft that staff had prepared so meticulously. They had zoned my neighborhood, which is Maple Heights, largely as R4. And the reason they did that is that if you look at my house, for example, I have I think it's a 5,500 square foot lot. It's a 1/10 of an acre. It's too small for R3. It's not legal. It's just grandfathered in under R3. But under R4, it would be, it would be real close to conforming. My neighbor's lot is similar. And then on the other hand, we've got several undeveloped lots. We've got one of my neighbors has a really, really large side yard. And then some of the other houses, they've actually demolished the house to build a larger side yard. And to reestablish that kind of historic development that typifies the neighborhood, we would need R4. And then you compound that, we've got a lot of small apartment buildings, which I know are not popular with the not in my backyard crowd, but that defines my neighborhood's character. That's why I have 3 bus routes I can choose from that go within 3 blocks of my house. I have 2 liquor stores. I have every single feature of my neighborhood is here because of all the people. That's the density of my neighborhood is what makes it work. I've had friends that have lived here simply because they were low income at that time and they needed a place to rent. And some of these smaller apartment buildings are still to this day offering apartments for about $500 a month, which is amazing in the current market. And these are mostly 2, 3, and 4 plexes, and then there's a few 8 plexes. I guess you call that a small apartment building. And then there's even there's a very small handful of 12 to 40 kind of unit buildings. And these are my neighborhood's character. This is the history that has produced my neighborhood that I moved into, produced those multifamily buildings. And under R4, those are more or less legal. They're at least considered. And under R3, they're just absolutely not. And so as my neighborhood is redeveloped, they're going to be redeveloping to this R3 standard if you leave this map as proposed. And that's a travesty. That will be much more expensive. We've got houses, we've got a whole block of houses that's currently going, just in the last couple of years, has sold for between $250,000 and $350,000 in a neighborhood that used to be quite affordable. And that's what happens with single family zoning. It just becomes a luxury when we could have dense housing. And so I really think that staff had the right idea when they looked at what was here, and they found that mostly R4 described what was here. And to change that zoning to R3 is a radical departure from the actual character of the neighborhood, and will produce a less affordable neighborhood over time. And already in the 15 years I've lived here, I have seen the density of this neighborhood decrease and the affordability decrease as well. And I'm really, really worried that some of these smaller apartment buildings might eventually get bought up and turned into luxury single family housing. And then what used to house 8 or 10 or 20 people is going to house only one family. And that will be a huge blow to my neighborhood. And I think we need to do something to recognize the actual historic character of this neighborhood as being one that has small multifamily development. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Lord. Cheyenne, sorry.
Hey, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys for your time and your work on this. It's obviously a big project. It's very important. Obviously, you're carrying out your civic responsibility.
I'm sorry, could you please make sure to state your name for the record?
Oh, yeah, Cheyenne Riker, excuse me.
Thank you.
I represent Indiana Center for Recovery and Haven Health Management, which is a management company that operates Indiana Center for Recovery. We're located at 1000 and 1004 West First Street. We also have a building at 909 West First Street, and our affiliates own all of West First Street from 901 West First Street on the south side all the way to Walker Street. And then from 1000 West First Street all the way to Walker Street, and then 2 residential properties on Walker Street that face Walker Street as far south as you can go to First Street. That said, you know, we were perplexed when we saw the rezone, because what it looks like is we were pulled into the McDowell Gardens neighborhood when nothing that we do is consistent with the residential use, with the exception of there are a couple of houses which we've had demolished along that street, and that was pursuant to the Historic Commission's approval. And we've made it clear that our goal is to utilize that property for healthcare purposes for the benefit of our patients. And so our view on it is that somehow we were overlooked when it came to the rezone of that First Street area. In fact, if you look all around to the north, to the northeast, and to the northwest, there seem to be carve-outs for the uses that are currently there, but for us, there was no carve-out, and we were just converted to an R3 under the new zone. So on behalf of Indiana Center for Recovery, we would just respectfully request that you reevaluate what it is that you want to see along that First Street corridor, given the fact that, you know, it's our hope that we can continue to operate there. We offer high-level substance abuse disorder services, and we'd like to continue to do that, and in fact, expand those services. We hire high-level healthcare professionals. We have over 100 employees, and we would like to see ourselves expand in that area. We're one of the largest addiction treatment providers in Indiana, and we think we provide a quality service. We'd like to continue that, but with this type of rezone, we would be limited purely to residential uses, and that would work a substantial hardship on what we'd like to do with that area. If you drive down that area, you can see a number of improvements that have taken place since we've taken over in 2017, and we intend to continue that growth, but we can't do it if the zone is an R3 zone. So respectfully, I would just say, go back to the drawing board and figure out, if you don't mind, I'd like to see a mixed use healthcare or some sort of medical district, which is what it was when we were there. The new UDO doesn't actually specifically describe the type of use that we are. So it's difficult to say what the appropriate zone would be, but I can say with certainty that R3 is not the use, the current use, and it doesn't, in my mind, accurately depict the future use of that area. So I really appreciate your time, and I know that you guys will make the right decision, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jean Len?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Jean Lennon. I've been listening to all the meetings for all the days, as have you, and I appreciate your stamina and taking public comment. My written statement was in regard to Amendment 6, so I've been trying to revise it to make it to the proposal as a whole. So here I go. I live in and I love the area of, I love Bryant Park neighborhood. And while I appreciate changes to the map that are largely removed R4 from Bryant Park neighborhood, I wanted to comment on the R4 zones that are left on the map. It was also mentioned in the opening remarks or discussion that the discussion of what edge is gets confused. And I would respectfully suggest that I'm not confused, I just disagree. When the edge is truly along the traffic corridor, for example, along Hillside, multifamily housing acts to quiet the noise from the busy street. I live within steps of Hillside. There are fourplexes. I see large multifamily apartment buildings, much greater than 8 units from my window. I am not talking about not wanting plexes or wanting development. It's the specifics of the areas within the neighborhood where I think we need something more. For example, if you've walked on Wilson Street north of Hillside, you'll know what I mean. The block between Palmer and Grant is a narrow single lane path, really. 2 cars cannot drive by next to each other along that area. There's water seepage along the hill on that road, and it's an ice slick all winter. This does not feel like it could be the new edge to our neighborhood if you allow R4 all the way up to Wilson. There are no sidewalks. There's infrastructure needs in that area. And so I really think that I know the PUD process is difficult because developers don't know what they can do, and it would be better to have a standard approach. But in these specific areas of Bryant Park neighborhood, we need improvements, and we got them through the PUD process. And we had larger sidewalks, ground level apartments, bike path extension to the B-Link. All these things made this neighborhood node that I love so much better, and I want to see more of that. So while I appreciate all the work that's being done, I think the areas in Bryant Park neighborhood for R4 should be reconsidered. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Riga Wood? Oh, sorry, I think I pressed the wrong person. Riga Wood? Riga, are you there? Okay, let's go to Dave Warren. Dave, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, you caught me off guard there, so I'll try to.
Sorry.
It's okay, totally fine. First, thanks for all of your work, all of you. That goes for all of the public commenters too. I know, these get heated at times, but it's because we all love this place, right? We're all here because we love this place. We're all making comments because we want to see this place get better. I think it was Brad Whistler at the 2019 Plan Commission meetings who said, I don't know if he said he hates these nights, but whatever he said, he followed it up with, but I love these nights. And it's because of everyone's passion and love for this community. Onto the map petition. Like some others have mentioned, I was kind of disappointed that the administration really walked back the R4, the areas that would have been considered R4 zones by about 75%. So I think it's a little, for those saying that the public wasn't listened to, I think the mayor's office listened to the public there when they reduced the amount of R4 land by 75%. And so, there's a compromise there. The text amendments are good. Also, I just want to be clear about something that the County Plan Commission president brought up. I think she just might have misheard me in the comment I made at the last meeting where I talked about 36,000 people commuting into the city to work, but they don't live in the city. In that comment, I mentioned that a lot of those 36,000 people, they choose to live in the county, and that is totally fine. I specifically mentioned absolutely fine. Everyone should, choose to live where they want to live, where it's best for them to live, in a house that's best for them. But there are absolutely a lot of people who live in the county who would like to live in the city. My family is one of those families. We put several offers down on houses in the city when we moved 3.5 years ago. Offers on 2 houses fell through. We couldn't make it happen. We had to move outside the city, just barely outside the city. We're in an area intended for annexation in Fieldstone, where we have a bunch of duplexes that went up. They're great. Families of all ages live in there. They make our neighborhood better. They make it more affordable. But we have to acknowledge that there are thousands, certainly not 36,000, but there are, a good 1,000, 2,000 people who would probably live in the city if they could afford to. And that means a lot of local income tax revenues for the city. It means a whole lot of good for the city. There are a lot of people who work for the government of the city of Bloomington who do not live in the city because they can't afford it. And so the text amendments and this new zoning map are going, it's a necessary change, but an insufficient change. Also wanted to point out, and I know this is supposed to be about the map, but I figured I'd bring this up, with the American Rescue Act, Bloomington and Monroe County are going to have an estimated $50 million coming towards us. And it's pretty flexible money. It's got to be spent by 2024. And so I hope that over the coming months, we can have a lot of city and county collaboration to figure out how we can best spend that money in ways that invest in our future. And I hope a lot of that includes a lot of considerations for low-income housing and for our neighbors experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Meyerson.
Hello, this is Deborah Meyerson. I appreciate the Plan Commission's opportunity for public comment tonight. I appreciate some of the comments I've heard already. The original R4 map offered a valuable opportunity for small multifamily development. The R4 zone in the current map has been reduced by 75% since the map was introduced last fall. And the historic neighborhoods traditionally included in the type of housing allowed in the R4 district as proposed, they had that type of housing. The allowable R4 uses are what we need as a community to allow for housing diversity in our city. And directing R4 just to arterial corridors relegates plex options and thus more people to live along noisy, busy corridors. As the UDO notes, the R4 district is intended to accommodate residential uses on small-scale urban lots that offer a diverse mix of housing opportunities consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans. And properties in the R4 districts, or especially what was originally called the R4 district, typically have access to many public services that are accessible to pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. This district may be used as a transition between small lot residential development and urban scale residential, commercial, and institutional development. And I'm quoting this in part to relate it to the Bloomington housing study that was released this summer that noted that nearly 2,600 housing units are needed to be produced through 2040. And it's not just that number, it then breaks it down to owner occupied and affordable low income, moderate market, high market, total renter. Renter of that portion is over 1,000 units by itself. So there's more housing needed, and we need to look at how our zoning allows the housing that this study, for example, says that we need can be built. So my closing is, how much R4 do we need? Not every infill project is going to significantly increase affordability, but a basic economic principle is that to maximize efficiency and equity, markets should respond to consumer demands. If the number of people who want to live in a neighborhood increases by a certain amount, allowable density should increase by that amount. And to maximize affordability and resource efficiency, development policies should favor lower cost infill housing in walkable urban neighborhoods where residents can minimize their motor vehicle and travel and associated costs. So I appreciate the Plan Commission's participation in this stage of the UDO, and hope that at some point the R4 can be expanded considerably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Crabtree.
Hi, I'm Kathy Crabtree, and I own and live in the Near West Side. I want to thank you for keeping R4 in the UDO. I actually preferred the larger R4 zone that was included in the October 2020 proposal, because I would prefer the R4 was more interspersed with residential areas, especially the walkable areas. Residents across all demographics place a high value on living in walkable neighborhoods. Multiplexes are a great opportunity for folks who want to purchase a residence but don't want to or are unable to maintain a single family home. I'm thinking, for example, of my mother who lived in a multiplex in Evansville. This allowed her to own and live in a residential setting without the burdens of upkeep that are required in owning a single family home as she aged. The reality is that single family homes are out of reach for many folks. In addition, many younger folks don't necessarily want to own a single family home, either because they want something smaller or because they are concerned about the environment and sustainability. And as we know, plexes are more sustainable. They are attached at least to one other unit, reducing the amount of energy needed to heat and cool each unit compared to a detached unit. Including plexes in existing walkable neighborhoods allows for more trips to be accomplished by foot, bike, or transit, which use less energy and emit less pollution than driving. Plexes use less construction material for each housing unit than detached units, again, saving on energy and emissions. These types of housing were commonly built in cities and towns across the country prior to exclusionary zoning. So I thank you for your support of allowing plexes in Bloomington. Finally, I have to speak up regarding the egregious misuse by one of the earlier members who made a public comment using the phrase sundown town inappropriately. Sundown towns were in fact all white communities, neighborhoods, or counties that excluded Blacks and other minorities through the use of discriminatory laws, harassment, and threats of use and violence. The name derives from the posted and verbal warnings issued to Blacks that although they might be allowed to work or travel in a community during the daytime, they must leave by sundown. You can learn more at blackpass.org and many other sources. Words matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Janice Sorby.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jan Sorby, and I live in the core neighborhood. In 1959, urban renewal was a trend across America. In the name of progress, hundreds of years of cultural development embodied in American cities, big and small, were scraped clean by bulldozers. The target was the blighted core neighborhoods that contained obsolete or substandard structures which impaired the sound growth of a city. Aided by billions of dollars and the charisma of a hot new national policy, empowered local governments to step in to smooth the path to condemn entire neighborhoods and then sell the neighborhoods to private developers at reduced prices. The intent was to stimulate large-scale private rebuilding and offer improved housing opportunities, much like the opportunity zones today. Federal funds were used to stimulate commercial development. Hundreds of thousands of families were displaced when their homes and neighborhoods were razed. Today's drive to add multifamily housing forms in core neighborhoods while leaving the large lot subdivisions absolutely untouched has an uncanny resemblance to the urban renewal of the 1950s. The perceived goal of this modern day urban renewal are to solve the pressing needs for more affordable housing. This is a noble goal, but ironically will take the affordable housing away. And like the 1950s, the target is directed exclusively toward Bloomington's central core and downtown neighborhoods. Like the neighborhoods of the 1950s, Bloomington's core represents a mere fraction of the available housing stock in the city. Despite this, city planners push their agenda forward to add.
Jan, we can't hear you.
Go back to phone, stop you from speaking for about 20 seconds.
Where?
You were talking about city planners.
Okay. Allow me to find my place. Sorry. Just like the 1950s, few people in our government are hesitating for a moment to ask if this should be done. Or to ask, is this best plan for Bloomington? Or is this only the latest trend du jour in public policy? Urban renewal seemed like the perfect plan in the 1950s. It just didn't turn out that way. Honestly, sometimes it's hard to separate good intentions from unintended consequences. However, once a building is gone or a community has changed beyond recognition, it is gone forever. Urban renewal hollowed out the built environment of many cities which are struggling to recover 70 years later. It is not easy to recover from failed public policy, even if it has or had a noble objective. What is at risk in Bloomington is its irreplaceable history. And I will add to this that there's an excellent book out, and it's called, I'm from St. Louis, and it's called Ferguson, In the Shadow of Pruitt-Igoe. And it is completely talking about the fact that if Pruitt-Igoe and urban renewal had never happened, nor would Ferguson have happened today. So I urge everyone that's listening right now to think about the long range implications for our housing stock in our neighborhoods, and contact your representatives at City Council and let them know how you feel about your neighborhoods. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jeff Richardson.
Thank you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jackie and Brad and the rest of the Plan Commission, Plan Department team. I always like hearing David Warren speak. And David, one of the things that you mentioned, and you mentioned actually at the congregation Beth Shalom about a month ago, that one of the probably things, if you could do over again, if you were in charge of the city, that you would have had the city work more closely with the county, and I would add IU on this particular project. And I saw a really well-written piece by the mayor today in today's paper, Help Is on the Way. I just want to quickly read what he said, a portion of it. It says, in the coming weeks and months, my administration and our city council will work together to invest these dollars, that's the $50 million, into our local recovery. We will work closely with the county and state government, which is getting $3 billion, to coordinate our efforts. We will collaborate intensively with employers, not-for-profit, civic organizations, and our residents to identify the best way to improve the lives and brighten our future. $15 million locally, leverage with the state and private partners can be transformative. And I totally agree with that. I think that's exciting to see that this kind of collaboration and coordination, communication is going to be happening. And I do not think that's what happened in this particular process. There's been a lot of meetings, but there hasn't been a lot of collaboration with the county, very little. There's been, as I know, very few meetings with Indiana University. There's been meetings with the neighborhoods, but it's been really more top down than collaborative and communicative and sharing and working together. And so I know we're talking today just about the upzoning and about updating the UDO and the maps, but I think there's a sentiment, a feeling that the decision-making process at the city can be improved when working not only with its various constituencies, but also with the county, the state, the university, and other key stakeholders, as Tommy Allison has repeated over and over again. So I hope this new opportunity with this federal money coming in will be the beginning of a new way to collaborate. But I also hope we can cite it when many of us will go before the city council in the weeks ahead and ask that it's not too late, that we think about, can we do this process still in talking about how best to plan for the future of our dear city. Just a footnote, Jan Sorby mentioned about urban renewal. A lot of you know that this Rethink Indiana project up in Indianapolis is going on. And it's about basically 65 plowing through the lower income neighborhoods in Indianapolis and destroying them forever. And of course, a lot of you are familiar with what happened along Indiana Avenue and the expansion of IUPUI, where the university actually apologized for the destruction of those neighborhoods. And it was a very moving ceremony when that happened. But nonetheless, to Jan's point, none of that can be retrieved. None of that can be done over again. So it's not that people don't have good intentions, that people haven't done some of the homework, but I don't think there's a full appreciation for what the long-term implications should be. So I know it's hard at the front end to do this kind of deep dive into the research, the data, talking with people in the neighborhoods, at the county level, at the city level, at the university level, but I think it pays off in the long term. So I hope that we can think about this more carefully moving ahead. And I look forward to sharing along with many others our concerns at the City Council. But thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight. And thank you for all of the people who have testified this evening. I always learn a lot at these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Sturbaum.
Yes, I have a little history story, I guess, to tell. My father was on the Bloomington's first plan commission. There was a time when Bloomington didn't have a plan commission. There was a time when building was more or less the Wild West. And when the Democrats got control of the city, they really started to have good government. They tried to initiate progressive ideas. And one of their ideas was, instead of just letting people build whatever they want to house students or build large multiplexes, let's limit it to 5 unrelated. And that was a well-intended move by the first Democrats to take over in the city of Bloomington. It had a disastrous effect. The neighborhoods were they were decimated. Things were getting torn down, and all those apartments that you see near the university were just popping up, and people were selling out, and a lot of the city was lost. a lot of those neighborhoods were lost, and people moved out of Bloomington, and the single family went down to about the 40% it is today in Elm Heights, you know, roughly 50% in all the west side. And then Tommy Allison was elected, and she said, we have to stop this. We have to get single family zoning to stop the erosion of our residential neighborhoods, because it was really obvious what was happening. And she mentioned in her comments how difficult it is to undo that. She said it would be a taking. And boy, was it a bad fight. The planner had threats. The planner had billboards put up against him for trying to bring about what they were yelling about, a down zone. And the meeting that I remember, because I was growing up, kitchen table experience of what was happening in the city of Bloomington. The meeting I went to was at Bloomington South. And it was a plan commission meeting that was so packed that the Bloomington South auditorium was full to standing room only. And I didn't see actual pitchforks and torches, but that was the attitude of the community on both sides. And they did do some, I mean, they've done the downzoning, but massive areas are still multifamily that were lost in that first upzone. And what the neighborhoods have done over time is recover to some level of balance. You know, the people that throw single family zoning around as though we've got plain old clear land, all this is built out. There's barely a balance of ownership and rental in these neighborhoods. And there are plenty of grandfathered multiplexes from the early upzone. And it just, I mean, Tommy Allison herself is pleading with you not to do this again. The community lived through this. This isn't an ordinary community, it's half student. And when you upzone, it's not going to work the way everybody loves to think it will. It's heavily biased in the way of rental, and it will convert single family houses to more rental. You know, what are we going to go to, 80%, 20%? Everybody's going to live outside of the city. You know, it's just going to have unintended consequences. And this history, these stories, this experience, you know, we're not just stupid old people. We've seen what's happened over our lifetimes. And we're saying, this is the same town. This is the same action. You're going from 3 unrelated, and most of those, half of those are rental, more than half of those are rental, to 6 unrelated. It's careless. And when you hear different people talking about their different neighborhoods and how different they are and how they want density here and this, it only says how complicated, how complex it is, how what works here won't work there. This is why we need more time. We need a pause. I just hope the council will listen, because you guys seem to think you know better than anybody, and it's tragic, and it may have tragic consequences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter?
Hi, Peter Dorfman near West Side. I thought I was done for the evening. I really wasn't going to make a comment on this, but I'm a little confused by the process we're going through now. I thought that the way this was supposed to work was the map, the final decision on the map would be introduced and people would comment specifically on that. Instead, we're relitigating the plexes and the core argument all over again. And some of it is very articulate and some of it's very interesting to listen to, but I wanted to reserve my comment just for the map itself. When we saw the original version of the map in October, it blanketed the entire core of the city or large sections of the city with R4 zoning. And the city had the wisdom to roll that back. I hear that that's disappointed some people, but the city has said, the representatives of the city have said this was in response to public input. And I really want to take them at their word on that. When I first saw that happen in February, I was very cynical. My sense was that nobody in the administration ever expected to be able to get R4 zoning all over the core of the city. That was a straw man proposal. Everybody expected it to be ripped apart. And in fact, that was the nature of the comment that came from the public. And what I want to say now is I hope that that's in fact what literally happened. I wasn't in a position to hear inside the room what was discussed, but here's what I want to believe happened. Bloomington is a small town, and I understand that there are a substantial number of people in the city who would really rather have an urban style of living. And unfortunately, they live in a small town in southern Indiana. And I think what the planning department and the mayor and everyone who weighed in on this, what they heard from the public was that there are a much larger number of people who have lived here for various periods of time, some of them 40, 50 years, who like Bloomington as it is and don't want to live in a large city. They don't want to have the urban experience. And what I want to believe is that the mayor and the planners and everyone involved made this choice out of respect for what I believe is a much larger proportion of the population of Bloomington, who like it as the small town that it actually is if you look at it, and not as the aspiring Milwaukee that a lot of people wish it was. So I just wanted to comment to give proper respect to the administration and the planning staff for accepting the input from the city, for rolling back those R4 zones, and for producing a much more realistic map. So props to the city for doing that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barry Clapper.
Hi, good evening. Barry Clapper from Elm Heights. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the maps. And now that we do have R4 mapped in some select locations, I want to suggest that that we take some additional time to look more closely at these areas and develop sub-area plans. I want to suggest that there's a lot of value in investing a little bit more time and study on a more local level to really lead by design what these areas should look like and how they could potentially develop. When I think of the area, the R4 area, that district along Atwater, or the one that has been talked about a little bit more this evening along Hillside on the south edge of Bryant Park, I know that these are actually very complicated locations in terms of traffic, in terms of pedestrian accessibility, and definitely in terms of infrastructure challenges. And I really think that these areas warrant some additional study and not to just essentially change the color on the zoning map and say we're done. I think to make a commitment to the people who live around these areas, who are interested in these areas, that we're going to take a little bit more time to make sure that the development of R4 is successful for everyone, that there aren't winners and losers. And I think that the community has a lot of interest and would like to engage. And I think that could be a very fruitful way to pick up this conversation moving forward, is further study of these small, select, but somewhat complicated and I think messy areas. you know, when I had the good fortune to be involved in the South Dunn Street development. And I remember all of the discussions about the back out parking and all of the concerns. And as I think about how Hillside could develop further to the west of that node, I really start to think, well, you know, what's the connection? How do we kind of build and pull those patterns across? And there are just a lot of questions and opportunities, and I don't want to see them lost, and I just don't want them to be left to private developers to figure out. I think that these are real, that there's a real opportunity here. So I am lobbying for that kind of process. A sub-area plan is a tool, is a planning tool, and I think it holds a lot of value at this juncture as the city moves forward and wants to see these areas develop successfully. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jean?
Hi, this is Jean Simonian. And I wasn't really planning to speak tonight either, but I have to register my disappointment in the rationale expressed throughout this mapping process that because an area is under rental pressure and so high rental occupancy, it is to be deemed effectively off limits to potential owner occupancy. This is most evident in the core neighborhoods, where average home prices are still lower than in the more expensive subdivisions. It's singularly hostile to potential for owner occupancy. We all know that the best opportunity for affordability in Bloomington is through ownership. There is no debate on this fact. You know, this is a very happy day in Bloomington for landlords and investors, but a very sad day for everyone else. Our passionate climate activists, as more people will be driven from the city, our affordable housing experts who work with individuals every day to better their futures, and all of us who want to see increased opportunities for those who have been marginalized in our city. And yet, rather than seize the opportunity to help more of our residents into ownership, this city has chosen to use zoning to enhance rental profitability. Welcome to new feudalism. Hopefully, council will be more open to community engagement in crafting a careful city where all residents can be successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aya Bond-Binder?
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to make a few different comments, mainly in response to some others that I just heard that are honestly a bit ridiculous. First, I wanted to mention something about, you know, Bloomington is a small town versus bigger cities. You know, if you ask most people that live in bigger cities, I mean, they tend to stick to their neighborhoods for the most part. I mean, the great cities of the world over, including in the US, are cities of neighborhoods, and that's what we're really talking about. And I think that's why most people in Bloomington who like Bloomington also like it here, is because they like their neighborhood. So I think that in many ways, Bloomington is more similar to larger cities than many would give it credit for. Another thing I want to make a point about is that, you know, a lot of the great cities and small towns the world over, you know, are in large part actually composed of much denser housing than single family, especially single family houses that are on, you know, giant 6,000 to 7,000 square foot lots. I mean, Tokyo, a mega city, is mostly single family housing by area, but I mean, all of its houses are on very small, tiny plots. So the point here is that, overall, I think that most cities, just throughout history and across the world, are really have mainly been composed of fairly dense housing, at least by contemporary American standards. The single family house on its own, quarter of an acre or seventh of an acre or something is really a uniquely American mid 20th century phenomenon. A couple other points I want to make is that, a lot of people I think seem to be casting or characterizing missing middle housing as this alternative to single family housing. But I don't see it that way. I really see it as an alternative to mid-rises. And I guess I mean by mid-rise, I mean, like 5 to 8 floors, which is what we tend to see like downtown more and more. Missing middle housing, duplexes, triplexes, that is an alternative to even denser housing. Because if we don't allow more missing middle housing to be built, we will see more and more mid-rise housing instead. Another point I want to make, and I've said this before, but no one seems to listen, household sizes today are smaller than they ever have been in history. When Bloomington was a small town in the 19th century, a young town, household sizes were about 5 to 6 people, and today they're about 2 or maybe 3 people. I mean, on average, you have a lot of people living alone. And multi-generational houses are declining in number. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but what I do want to point out is that means that the core neighborhoods composed of single family homes that once housed 5 or 6 people today are housing fewer people than they ever have been. So if we want to preserve that level of vitality, that level of density that enabled Bloomington as a small town that we love, we should get back to that level of neighborhood density. And that means allowing more missing middle housing to deal with and meet with the fact that household sizes are decreasing in number of people. 1 or 2 last things I want to say. The previous commenter implied that people were going to be driven away from the city by this. That's an absurd statement. I think, as most of us can hopefully realize, that is not what we are talking about here. We are, of course, talking about more people being able to enjoy Bloomington for the wonderful city that it is. So the characterization that this is going to drive people away from the city, I think when the commenter was saying that, they had it in mind, oh, this is going to drive certain types of people away. And then the last thing I want to say is, of course, nothing in the R4 zone prohibits single family housing. That is, of course, absurd as well to imply that. If someone wants to build a single family home in an R4 zone, or indeed in a variety of other zones in the city, of course they can. They can buy an existing single family home, continue to live in it as a single family home. There's nothing banning single family houses from residential zones in Bloomington. So thank you for your work on this. I look forward to continuing this debate, of course, in City Council like the rest of you, and good night.
Thank you.
Vox Booker.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Vox Booker. First of all, I would like to thank the city's planning department. They have done a tremendous job of soliciting feedback from the community. And I appreciate you all, as well as I appreciate you, commissioners. I would just like to apologize for some of the vitriol that's been thrown your way. And I think it's uncalled for in this circumstance. There was some language that was employed that was kind of disturbing to me. Talk of sundown towns and the social programs that happened between the 1930s and 1950s as housing reforms go. It's imperative that you understand that things like redlining or even racist covenants that Bloomington had many of, and our neighboring communities and arguably Bloomington as well at times where sundown counts. I don't have to remind you all that the Klan, last bombing was 1968 downtown. What actually changed a lot of that in the nation was, yesterday was the 53rd anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. And we saw mass unrest. In 1968, the Fair Housing Act was finally passed. But this isn't a situation where people are talking about bulldozing entire neighborhoods. This is talking about incremental change, about creating walkable and vibrant neighborhoods. There's been a lot of talk about who will be excluded, but a lot of that folks using that language are already homeowners. They're not being excluded, and I don't quite understand the fatalistic tone that they take. And we have to have things like missing middle housing that was mentioned. As you folks as a commission know, you don't have a duty just to speak for homeowners. You're speaking to the welfare of an entire community. One of the things that is perplexing is Bloomington is not this mythical land that is the exception to every economic force that dictates policy throughout the rest of the nation. We're still bound to those same basic economic laws that folks have talked about. I think it's important that we do think about this carefully, but I also think that's been done. There are some things that I'm disappointed with, of course. I think R4 should be expanded. I was dismayed to hear about the Recovery Center potentially having a zoning issue. I think those are major things that should be addressed. But I think that's the nature of a democratic society where compromise is a virtue. So I will close and cede the rest of my time. But once again, I thank you all, and I urge that you support this.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comments on ZO 10-21? We got one more there, Jackie.
Yes, I think so. Yep.
I see a few more now. All right.
Russ Skiba?
Hi, my name is Russ Skiba. I live in Hoosier Acres. I've lived there for 22 years and in Bloomington for 34 years. I'd like to join my voice to the chorus of those tonight and at all of the previous Plan Commission meetings who have called the process of the rollout and considerations of both the Plex amendments and the MAP amendment disappointing, unresponsive, frustrating, and inadequate. Ms. Scanlon, in her report at the beginning of the evening, suggested that the process that the planning department engaged in November was more than adequate for ensuring public participation in the process. I must respectfully disagree. The word I would use to describe that argument is specious. Now, before anyone misinterprets me here and thinks that I'm calling anyone dishonest in any way, let me read the actual definition of the word specious. Superficially plausible, but actually wrong. Superficially, the plan department did hold a number of meetings, mostly in November. As we all know, however, the attention of the nation and our community was substantially engaged elsewhere during November. At the height of the second wave of the pandemic and a democracy that seemed to be hanging by a thread. Superficially plausible, but actually wrong. Superficially, the plan department presented the plan at these meetings and took citizen input. But what one hears again and again from those who attended those meetings was that the presentations were decidedly top-down, characterized by long presentations by planning staff with just a few minutes at the end for community input. Superficially plausible, but actually wrong. Superficially, the plan department claims residents had opportunities to have their questions answered. In reality, however, the planning department promised to post all unanswered questions to its website. Those questions were not posted for 2 months. Then only a very selected subset of those questions was posted on the website with long responses from the planning department. Superficially plausible, but actually wrong. This has not been a process that the citizens of this community deserve. I could go on to other examples from throughout the process, but from start to finish, from the moment that the mayor chose to reintroduce a proposal that had been decisively, only a few months previously, decisively rejected by both the majority of the community and the city council, from that moment on, the process was flawed, and it continues to be flawed to this very day. I urge, if this plan commission wishes to in any way show that this is not a flawed process, I would urge that the plan commission just pass this up to the city council with no recommendation. Otherwise, I would urge citizens throughout the community to write to their city council members and tell them that Bloomington needs to reject these map amendments and the previous Plex amendments so that Bloomington can have a fair, open, and participatory discussion of the serious issues of equity, affordability, and availability that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric?
Thank you. My name is Eric Ost, and I'd like to say good evening to Plan Commission members and Planning Department staff. Thank you for your thoughtful investment of time and attention in service to our community. I know it requires a lot of time and consideration, and this is a complex issue. I ask that you vote tonight on the petition ZO 1021 and forward it to the Common Council with no recommendation. Many of the proposed UDO changes are broadly promoted to address gaps in housing for members of our community. It does so by codifying a more market-based focus rather than a more community-based focus. In effect, the market is naturally led to the creation, perpetuation, and amplification of the gaps in housing affordability that we see in our community and which are of keen concern for so many people. When we look for local solutions, let us make sensible comparisons. Bloomington is not Tokyo. Tokyo is 4.3 times more dense than Bloomington. It's 16,000 plus people per square mile, and Bloomington is 3,700 approximately people per square mile. So it's not a relevant comparison. The 2019 study that is entitled Working Hard, Falling Behind, Report on Affordability reports Monroe County is a net importer of workers. Approximately 15,883 people, or 18% of the total workforce, live outside the county and commute in. And the report continues that in part, this may be attributable to the lower cost of living in surrounding counties. For example, Lawrence County sends the most residents to Monroe County. And again, this is Monroe County, but that Bloomington is in Monroe County for work. In Lawrence County, a worker whose household is composed of a single parent and 2 children must make $17.80 an hour to meet their household cost of living. A Monroe County worker with the same family composition must make $24.83 per hour. The report observes, while part of solving the problem of lack of affordable housing is to build more housing, we know that we are not going to build our way out of the affordable housing problem. In addition to building, the city, and this is a recommendation to the city, should look closely at the potential of naturally occurring affordable housing. These are residential properties that are affordable without any sort of governmental subsidy. They can be either rental or owner occupied. This approach is not only cost effective, but greener, as existing structures are being preserved rather than new ones built. One way to preserve this housing is to buy it before investors do so. Current units are not gentrified or modified, displacing some of the community's most vulnerable low-wage workers, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. It recommends that the housing fund, the housing fund serving the Twin Cities and Minneapolis is a good example of preventing this form of gentrification by purchasing and preserving 800 to 1,000 units of affordable housing. Another powerful way we can protect this natural affordability is through the vigilant protection of single-family zoning. Local historic preservation can discourage demolition or conversion of small affordable houses to unaffordable houses or rentals, thus maintaining both affordable ownership opportunities and affordable rentals as well. Affordable housing is a fundamental issue, and our focus, as recommended by the 2019 report referenced above, should be on housing for people, not for profits. Further, potentiating the market will not produce significantly more affordable housing. Incenting the acceleration and concentration of the creation of duplexes and the follow-on securitization of rents will move our community in the wrong direction. Simply increasing the number of market rate rental duplexes will do little to enhance affordable home ownership. Tragically, it will materially shut that door for many people who would like to own their own homes. Commissioner Sandberg and others have recommended a pause with a purpose, and we should take time to investigate and formulate a plan that incorporates a sense of place. It's time to take a breath, take stock, and take the next steps necessary to construct a future that provides housing for all members of our community. I ask again that you vote on this petition and send it to the Common Council with no recommendation.
Thank you.
Barbara Moss.
Hi, thank you for this final opportunity to speak to the Plan Commission. I guess I'm really just speaking for the record because while you have heard us, you've heard our voices, I don't believe you've really been listening. Or if you have been listening, you've chosen to ignore what many of the public have said against the plexes during these hearings, and often by 2-to-1 or even 3-to-1 margins. And it feels really, honestly, very disrespectful for our concerns. Could not be more clearly put aside than the instance of you radicalizing the mayor's proposal and what came from the original City Plan Commission to take something that was conditional and make it as of right, which in effect eliminates even more public input, the public hearing, which will be gone. And our voices, it feels like they're actually being further stifled. And as many others have said, this has been occurring from the start of this upzoning with a top-down approach, which really truly appears undemocratic. And for such a critical zoning change that will, like it or not, drastically change our neighborhoods. And we've had, so many clever and intentional and good people speak on both sides of this issue. But it clearly indicates that we're not there. We're not ready for prime time with this yet. And yet we're going to vote on this, or you're going to vote on this. Even just tonight, listening to the person from Bryant Park and the other fellow talking about the putting him in an R3 so that he, with the medical help that they're giving people, opioid addiction or whatever they're helping with. There have been a lot of mistakes. A lot of things have you've done a lot of work clearly, and a lot of it's good, but there's a whole chunk of it that isn't good. And we need to stop this. We need to kind of pull back and really let the neighborhoods speak with you, not just in a reactive way, but in a proactive way. There's been a lot of neighborhood input, but it's more responding to something that you have put out from the top down, not something where you're asking, what is it that you think? What is it that you need? And frankly, I honestly do not understand what is so awful about some of these small core neighborhoods with single family homes where these people have worked their whole lives in many cases, or lived for dozens of years in these neighborhoods, and you're suddenly going to change the game in the rules in the middle of the game. I mean, is that fair? So many people are talking about upzoning and how it's going to help with, getting more people in there and how to make more walkable and so forth. But what about I believe there's some kind of a law from way back in my brain about quiet enjoyment. What about the people who actually live there now and their ability to continue to live the kind of lives that they have, that they thought they would be able to? Have a small plot of land, not have it overrun with student housing, because the reality in Bloomington is that we all, we're not in New York, we're not in Tokyo, we're a small college town or, middle-sized college town. And we are going to have, we go from three units to 6, possibly with duplexes. You are going to have a lot more students in these neighborhoods. It's just a reality. So I really think that stepping back and not making a decision is the best decision that you can make. And I'm going to echo a few other folks in the last few speakers who said, please, you can move this to the city council, but I would highly recommend and hope that you could do with no recommendation rather than the proposal I believe that you're almost certainly going to approve this evening. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comments on ZO 10-21? I don't see any hands raised. Jackie, can we take a
I don't see
check
anything
of
on
Facebook?
Facebook.
Make sure.
Mm-mm.
All right, last call for public comment on ZO 10-21. Going once, going twice. All right, we are back to the commission. For any additional questions or comments or a motion, we will need to get a motion on the table. Commissioner Burrell, go ahead.
I would like to raise a question about the Indiana Center for Recovery, that their properties are located on are going to become R3, and I would like to question why are they not going to be labeled MH for health?
Sure.
Thank you.
I can answer that question. So the comprehensive plan designation there, actually, I'll pull that up in a second, but let me share with you the map here. This is the location we're looking at here on West 1st Street. And while ICFR owns a number of properties here and including properties zoned here for mixed use, there are other residents, rental residents and owner occupied residents on the southern side of 1st Street as well, with the anticipated, there's also residential in this area. This is one of the R4 zone districts in the proposal. So we basically looked at this area with existing uses, but not in deference to potential future uses for ICFR. Any anything that is there now that meets code requirements can stay and will be considered lawful non-conforming. And additionally, Mr. Riker said that no uses that they utilize can be done in R3, which is not quite accurate. Group care home small and opioid rehab home small. I believe we've classified one of their uses at First and near First and Henderson as actually group care home small. Is allowed. It's a permitted use. They operate a location, as I just mentioned, at Henderson and First in the R3 zoning district. So were they to operate other homes like that one, they would be able to build new after the zoning map was approved. And again, anything that they have existing there now would become lawful, non-conforming, and could go on existing. Did that answer your question, Flavia? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, just
Oh, sorry.
sorry. I was muted. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to know what is the advantage then? Why does Mr. Riker believe that being MH will be advantageous since it's allowed on R3?
I would say that those that I mentioned are neighborhood scale. Those are the small care homes, those that could be, that are within the community now that you maybe don't notice. The types of uses he is referencing that aren't allowed are more intense and are more along the line of a facility as opposed to the type of scaled home. So the UDO scales them based on number of occupants. So I believe it's, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's maximum 6 for the small. And I can look that up, but it's basically a scale issue. Those homes that can go into R3, we had determined during the UDO update of 1920 that that scale is compatible in a largely residential area, which even though they do own a number of these properties, this is a largely residential area. And so we had proposed it to switch to R3 as opposed to one of the mixed use districts.
I just want to chime in real quick. It's 8 or fewer.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the business all the facilities, the group homes that he has, that the Indiana Center for Recovery currently have can stay, and they're not going to be affected. Would the issue that he's raising is because he will not be able to build a commercial facility? Is that the issue?
Those facilities that are for more than 8 occupants are not allowed in the R3. So yes, if they were wanting to build that in the future, that is not allowed there. That's correct.
Is that because they are at McDowell's Gardens? I mean, they're right.
They are
at
near
edge
the
of
north end of McDowell Gardens, yes. And we were trying to have some expanded area of R3 here. Instead of taking that mixed use down to First Street, we added residential along because there's residential on the south side as well. I can share that just a second. So again, they own numerous properties in this area. Again, some properties, at least one that I know of in the mixed use, what we're proposing for the mixed use district, but then some properties have been developed along First Street here. They own, I believe, a couple of the properties in here. One that was formerly an apartment complex, and then some of the other properties there as well. The R3, again, allowing for each one of these sites to build a facility that houses up to 8 people, but that would then be still compatible with the other residential uses that aren't ICFR related along this portion of First Street.
So I guess my last question then is, what is the current zoning for what they own?
Some of, let's see. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Hold on. the north of First Street is the hospital zoning that's going away. So let me look really quickly. I just am not sure about south of First Street. Just a second. Oops. So it is, yeah, it is zoned mixed use healthcare currently. Sorry, I don't know who that was. It's zoned mixed use healthcare because this was obviously an area that could have been, and in some ways recently had started to be more so than in the past, used as supportive healthcare for the hospital site, which is going away. And so all of the mixed use healthcare zoning in this area is also being removed and put to a different base zoning district.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand how this affects what they do with the new zoning.
Yeah, so they will be able to on each lot. So I think, you know, let's just say they own 8 lots. They would be able to permitted put in a group care home on each lot to house up to 8 people. So again, if they own 8 lots, 64 people. What they would prefer to do on, again, however many lots they have, is to house more people, as many people as possible. So we have to balance at some point the other uses in this area and what scale of non-residential development is appropriate. Like we've done, like the conversations we've had with all the other areas that we've changed from strictly R3. In this case, we're actually doing R3, but from MH to R3.
I think we lost Brad Whistler.
Oh, we may have. Jillian, Brad said his internet was being funny. So if you could take over. Thank you. Sorry, Karin. I didn't see his name actually go away.
Sure. Well, actually, I was raising my hand to make to ask a question.
Sorry about that. I was looking at the map.
So I don't know, if, Commissioner Burrell, does that conclude yours, or do we want to write for another view of the map, Jackie?
I'm not Flavia. Is that enough information?
It is enough information. I just wanted to maybe give Mr. Riker an opportunity to speak. I don't know if this is the time to introduce an amendment.
Yeah, I would just before, oh, sorry, I forgot I was looking up the comprehensive plan designation there is helpful. Just a second. Oh, here comes Brad. Sorry, just a second, Flavia. I'm doing too many things at once here. So the comprehensive plan designation there is the mixed use residential, which we think has more of a focus on residential. So we chose R3 in this area because there is existing residential there. There are existing facilities there owned by ICFR, run by ICFR, that are permitted, have been permitted conditionally. Those can remain, but the residential zoning allows for any future development of theirs or anyone's who wants to develop there in a group care home way, that it would have to be of the scale that is in relation to the other residential that's in that area there at the north end of McDowell Gardens. And that is in line with the comprehensive plan, is what we think. I don't know, let me get Brad back here.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
After some technical difficulty, I'm back. I was gone for a minute there.
Mike, I don't know if you want to comment on that. I don't know if it's appropriate to I don't know if it's appropriate to engage members of the public during question and answer time. I'm not sure what the protocol is on that.
Yeah, I mean, so Mr. Riker is not the petitioner in this case. So if the Plan Commission wanted to allow a full round of additional public comment for any member of the public who wanted to comment on the proposal with a certain time limitation, that would be fine, and that would include Mr. Riker. But that would be the method to engage him in further discussion.
Sorry, and I had one additional. I should have written these all down. Apologies. Thank you, Mike. Again, we are also following the master redevelopment plan that came out of that public process. And this was showing R3 for this area as well.
Can I just ask a question on the process? I'm not suggesting this, but I just want to better understand what Mr. Rooker just said. So is it possible for a plan commission member to propose an amendment at this stage and then go through a round of public comment just on that amendment?
Sure. Of course, yes.
Okay.
A plan commission member can propose an amendment at any time, and then of course the same rules as applied to other amendments would apply. I think Brad was going to say yes to that as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So Flavia, I mean, I think it wouldn't be Mr. Riker necessarily proposing the amendment. I think it would be you or someone else on the commission that would be looking to make that change.
I would like to propose an amendment number 7 of ZO-10-21 for us to look at the properties owned by Indiana Center for Recovery. They are currently zoned mixed use health, and that will be turning into R3. I don't have, he requests to be turned to MH, but I would like to open the discussion to see what is the best use for this location.
If we're going to consider this as an amendment,
so it has to be.
We'll have to have this is going to have to be very specific. Not only will we have to have a specific zone, but we'll have to have some specificity of the area that or the specific parcels that we're talking about here. I'm not sure if we have a good way to define those, either by naming the specific parcels or just by describing the boundary of the area, but we would have to be at least that specific so that it could be translated onto the map.
Yeah, okay, so if the idea is to pull out, let me share again here, sorry, the hospital redevelopment plan, master plan. So this is the, okay, sorry. Just one second. Okay, so we're talking about properties in this general area, I believe, and they own this as well, and this corner, I believe. Yes, if we need to craft an amendment to change this area, then we would likely need time to do that, to recess to do that on at another time or later this evening or something along those lines. Does that make sense? I mean, Mike, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think if we want to craft it with precision in a way where the amendment is going to be functional, particularly when we're talking about an amendment to the zone map, we're going to need staff is going to need a few minutes to craft something. I don't see any other way to do it. So I don't know how long we'd need, Jackie, 15, 20 minutes. I don't have a good sense about it, but we would need some time to put something in writing, so. Do you agree, Jackie? I know we're having this conversation right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. So is the idea to pull out the ICFR parcels or to rezone that whole R3 area to something else? I'm not sure.
Well,
Commissioner Kinsey, go ahead. I think you had a question.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, I mean, I understand where Commissioner Burrell is coming from and to respond to this particular parcel. But I wonder if the staff can comment on if there's another option for us in terms of its proximity to the hospital redevelopment, if there will be another opportunity to make this change in this particular area, perhaps when there's the hospital redevelopment petition and that work moves forward. I don't know if that makes sense to, move forward with what we're proposing this evening, but with some consideration for changing this designation given its current use at a time when it's more appropriate to talk about the whole hospital redevelopment area. I don't mean to ignore the concern now, but I just wonder if there's a time when it could be talked about and discussed in relation to that other hospital redevelopment.
I think,
Well, I think-
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think certainly we can consider an amendment to the map anytime we want, really. I think it's just a matter of, efficiency, right? If we get it done now, then the council can adopt it as part of this whole package. They wouldn't have to go through a separate process of debating it here and then having it debated again separately at the council. There's nothing that we do tonight can't be undone with a separate action.
I would say, I'll just comment that, yes, so the comprehensive plan and the hospital redevelopment plan both designate this area as primarily residential. So that's why we went that way. If in the interim, a private entity has purchased a number of properties with plans to do something else there, that is a reality that we can weigh. We stick with the long range plan. If they want to petition to change that plan, they always can, and then come back with their own rezone. I think staff would be most comfortable moving forward with the R3 because that is in line with both of the long range guidance plans that we have. And yes, as Brad said, that could always be changed in the future with a more comprehensive community, discussion of, hey, this, entity owns 10 parcels on this block and they're looking to, maximize each parcel with the, the most intense use possible. It's not as though they don't operate there. They do. We don't, get complaints. It's not anything to do with that. It's that the comprehensive plan is pretty clear about this area. And if anyone, including, if anyone wants to change it, then we would prefer that would go through the process of updating that plan and or having a specific discussion. It's just kind of a big deal to change this small area over from the residential that it's designated. Thank you.
Commissioner Sandberg, go ahead.
Yes, and I respect any member's ability to make an amendment as we go here, but personally, I like a little more time to do the research and make sure that we're not doing anything with unintended consequences. I'm just not a fan of amendments on the fly as a rule. I'm not a fan of that when it happens at city council meetings. It's kind of like making the sausage. And so I just prefer a little more time to make sure that staff has the opportunity to weigh both the pros and cons here. But of course, anyone can do what they want. Thank you.
Another question. So are they able to go into the Board of Zoning Appeals once this map is approved and request a different zone?
Excuse me. No, they would be going
rezone.
through you to council. A rezone would go to council. They would have to request a rezone if they wanted to change it to a different zone. And again, they do operate small group care homes, and those are allowed. But they do also have larger facilities that those that are there now can remain, but new ones could not be built under the zoning district.
Commissioner St. John.
Yeah, just to clarify for staff. So we're talking about the south side of West First Street. I think you said in the 800 and 900 block. Is that correct? And
the north and south side here.
North and south. Okay. Okay. So on the south side, they're mostly homes that they're using as, and again, I understand that we would need more information, but I did have this question from a few minutes ago, these are mostly houses that they're using for group homes, right? As opposed to like a big facility.
They have what used to be an apartment complex that they use.
Okay.
And the larger used to be a doctor's office across the street. They utilize that as well. Dr. Kelly's former office, one to the west, they use that. But otherwise, the structures on the south side are traditional single family size homes.
Okay. And so just to over clarify this, they can continue to operate in those larger structures that they already operate in under the R3 zone. They can continue to do that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions or discussion? Commissioner Kinsey, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one other question and hope the staff can comment on Barry Clapper's comment regarding looking more closely to develop sub-area plans in the R4 area. And I wonder if you could comment on whether that's something that can be done. I mean, I do think it's exciting to think about what R4 will permit and what it allows, but I also wonder about her idea, which sounds like a good one, to develop these sub-area plans.
Sure. That goes to, yes. So sub-area plans are something you lay out and identify as being utilized in the comprehensive plan stage. We've done those before. Scott, I don't know if you're there. You could probably answer the question better than I can with that history, if you are there. But basically, yes, sub-area plan is you write a comprehensive plan, you designate areas that need more specific look. We've done neighborhood plans in the past. Those are sub-area plans. My understanding is that with the 2018 comprehensive plan, sub-area plans were not a part of that plan. It was to look more holistically, and that the comprehensive plan would be the guiding document. And yes, that's my understanding, that those were not planned during this go round. They could be done. Planning is kind of a living thing. So this zoning code gets approved and, a neighborhood wants to petition to do a sub-area plan. I'm sure that that's something we could look into. That's something that, like some of these issues people have raised, those conversations are had at the comprehensive plan stage, and then that document is used to update the legal document. So though people may feel unsatisfied, a lot of those conversations were already had. Oh, here's Scott. There you go. Scott, can you unmute?
Thanks, Jackie. Can everybody hear me okay? Scott Robinson, Director of Planning and Transportation. Thank you, Commissioner Kinsey, for that question. I will just say that the current comprehensive plan does identify focus areas. These are kind of locations that identified further study. So one of the examples is the hospital site. The city did a request for proposal. We hired, looked nationally at firms, brought in a firm, and we did a intensive community outreach process with the mayor's office and the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development, and they did the hospital plan. That's a, example of a study. Is that a part of the comprehensive plan? No, we did not amend that and adopt it as part of the comprehensive plan, but we did look at those recommendations and use that for guidance for rezoning tonight. There's a couple other locations we identified, the southwest quadrant, locations along the I-69 corridor, the Switchyard Park area. So there's some examples where, again, maybe a little bit different. We hired a third party to help us envision what those would be, just based on like our current documents, to kind of say which way do we want to go. They weren't very public in that process, but again, just to help educate us. So certainly if there's something that we want to do in the future, that's something that I'm open to. In the past, the Plan Commission has kind of commissioned us to do that kind of work. And so if that's something the commission is serious to do, I don't think should be done with a recommendation on the zoning map tonight, but in the future, you could pass a zoning ordinance or a resolution saying, hey, planning staff, please do the following, and we can look into that. I can put it in my budget request if we want to hire, outside consultants, what have you. So that's kind of the process to do that. And then, I think the question to ask is, what level do we want to do this sort of study? If it's a comprehensive plan amendment, there's certain legal processes and steps that we would need to do that eventually would have to go back to the Plan Commission for consideration, and then City Council. It wouldn't be an ordinance, it'd be a resolution, but again, there's things that we'd have to do. Or kind of like the hospital study, we could do a public process, get somebody involved. It could be staff, what have you, and then present stuff, but then use those findings maybe on a less official level to help guide us in the future. So there's different options we could pursue. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, very helpful to know. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? I'm not sure, Commissioner Burrell, if we resolved your questions. I might just suggest that if there is a desire to amend that map in any way, but particularly in the area around the hospital there, that might best be done after. I think we would need to either recess or continue to another meeting if we were going to do that. So I would just propose if there is a desire to do that before we pass this on to the council, that someone would need to make a motion to that effect, either continue this to another meeting to give chance for another amendment to be properly authored, or at a minimum, a little recess here to get something authored. But even at that, we'd have to move quite quickly, as it's already 8:22, and we need unanimous consent to introduce any new business after 9 p.m. So we would need to move quickly if we were going to do any of those things. So we don't have any motion on the floor right now, so we need to get something on the floor, whether that's on our final recommendation or an amendment or a continuation, whatever that may be. Commissioner Seabour, I think I saw your hand there.
Yeah, I guess you saw me. I guess just on the question about the properties along First Street, just speaking for myself, just hearing closely what has been discussed, hearing closely what the comprehensive plan suggests for this area, and looking at and getting familiar with the hospital site redevelopment master plan that was just finalized a couple months ago, that very clearly suggests this area be zoned R3, which is what is in the current proposed map. I just wanted to, and I believe that project had a very intense and robust public engagement effort. And so just speaking for myself, I will likely want to support that, and especially hearing that it is in line with the comprehensive plan. But just wanted to throw that piece of information out about the master plan for the hospital site that is dated January 2021. I think I just wanted to share my thoughts on the topic.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I guess a lot of the things I do sometimes is for educational purposes. For one, I want to learn, and we are all learning on the job here as we go. Been doing this a while, and but still a lot to learn. And so it is interesting when you hear from the public and they're surprised about something, and there have been several opportunities to talk about and discuss. The other issue too that I always want to remind the public is this is not a forever law. This is a working document, and we've been working on for 2 years, and things have been changing. And as soon as we get it all right and everybody's happy about it, we're going to have to change again because people change, circumstances change. So with that in consideration, I am going to withdraw what I was talking about. Knowing that they have recourse and that there are recourse for them to participate in a hospital redevelopment and be a very centric part of that, as well as they can also ask for a rezone if necessary in front of City Council. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Would any other commissioners have comments, questions, or a motion? Commissioner Kate.
I just wanted to voice my own interest for what Commissioner Kinsey was talking about earlier in terms of potentially pursuing what sounds like a resolution would be the way to go to do some further study or possibly produce a sub-area plan, perhaps not only for the area that Barry Clapper was talking about, but if there are other areas that have come up raising similar concerns from prior public comment, that would be something that between now and our next meeting, which I think is a week from now, we might even be able to sit down and do some further discussion of that. The only other thing I guess I'll say is, although I voted, as everyone knows, against the by right changes to the staff amendment as changed earlier. In terms of the map, I, like others who have commented here tonight, see a lot of care in terms of identifying the areas for rezone in the map and responsiveness to public comment. And so I don't really see a reason not to vote that without a positive recommendation. To me, the issue is more whether those R1 through R3 zones in terms of plexes should be by right or conditional. And that issue can get taken up by the City Council when all of this goes over to it. So that's it. That's all I got.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Kinsey, go ahead.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
If there are no further comments.
Well, we can still have comments after your motion, so go.
Well,
let's go ahead and get it on the table.
Let's get it on the table before 9 o'clock. So I would like to motion to forward as amended ZO 1021, the new zoning map to the City Council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any final comment on the motion before we take our vote? Go ahead, Commissioner Kinsey.
Yeah, I want to address a couple of things about this and my support of this motion moving forward. You know, I think the Plan Commission and the city and the planning staff, I just want to thank you for all of your work and the public comment, bringing this forward and discussing all the issues that are related to this really complex process is important. You know, I think one of the things that's interesting about this zoning map discussion is how much compromise was a part of the process. So, you know, what's interesting about our conversation tonight is there are folks here who commented who did not appreciate the change from the original map, but yet I think that original map change demonstrates listening and public concern that was expressed through a lot of those earlier meetings. So I don't think it was superficial change as was suggested. I think it really demonstrates when public comments are really, you know, important to this process, that things can change. You know, I think that it's not appropriate to think that anytime someone would raise an objection that would just be registered. I don't think this is a simple issue of this side, you know, the side for or against. It's not that simple. There is no kind of people who are completely for and completely against. It's a lot more complex than that. But I do think that this latest topic that we were talking about today with zoning map change really demonstrates the power of public comment and how much things can change as part of that. I think what we haven't talked about as much today is how much this zoning map includes some really important other areas, the mixed, the MS district that's been established in Gateway North. We just barely scratched the surface on that tonight. And I think that is so important to making a lot of other things happen to create more affordable space. I also think, we haven't talked much about other changes to the hospital zoning that really could, again, open things up. So I think this is a very complex issue. It's a thoughtful plan. The one thing I will raise or state again about some of the comments, I do agree with the commenters who yearn for more city, IU, and county collaboration. I agree with that. And I think as plan commissioners, we've had several other occasions recently where we have really wanted to do more of that kind of collaborative planning. I hope that that can come. As we've said tonight, this is not the end of this. I also think that in the time between whenever we conclude our process with the Plan Commission and the City Council receives all of our recommendations moving forward and they begin their deliberations, that perhaps there's more opportunity to do some public meetings to help people understand and get the questions that are particularly behind some of their fear and trepidation, that they can get those answers addressed explicitly. So I'd like to see if perhaps there's another occasion to allow people to have their concerns addressed so that we can really speak clearly when it comes to City Council consideration. So I'm hopeful about that. And I think the R4 that's a part of this new zoning map is really exciting. And I look forward to further study about this complicated area, but also some others that might be part of further resolutions that we might offer. So I'm looking forward to that. And I want to thank everybody again for their hard work on this, particularly the staff.
Thank you. Any additional final comments? All right. Well, I'll just echo a lot of that and just say thank you to everyone who's stuck with this. I know it's been a long process. I greatly appreciate the staff's work and all the public comments. I know this is a tough issue. We're literally rezoning every square inch of the city. It's not easy to do. It's impossible to do while making everyone happy. But I do really appreciate all the effort that went into it and all the public comment and just very glad that we were able to get through this in a civil manner, and I hope this just leads to better things ahead for the city of Bloomington. I know everybody who's involved here wants the same thing, and that's just to make our great city even better. So I appreciate everyone. I think with that, I think we're ready to.
We have to suspend, do the vote to suspend the rules for two hearings first before we take the final vote.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you're right. So yeah, as is the case with any petition, our standard rules require that we have 2 hearings. So we will need a motion to suspend the rules to forego the second hearing on this before we vote on this motion to forward.
Motion to suspend the rules for a second hearing.
Okay. Second.
All right, so the first vote here is to suspend the rules to forego the requirement of a second hearing. Go ahead and call the roll on that one, Jackie.
Seabour?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Sandberg?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Whistler?
Yes.
Kinsey?
Yes.
St. John?
Yes.
Burrell?
Yes.
All right, so the rules are suspended. The second hearing is not required. We can go ahead now and vote on the recommendation, the motion to forward ZO 1021 to the City Council with a positive recommendation. Let's call the roll, please.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Sandberg,
No.
Kate,
Yes.
Whistler,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
and Seabour.
Yes.
7-1. Thank you.
Okay, the motion passes 7-1, and that concludes, I think, all the petitions that we've got on our agenda. So again, thanks to everyone for your patience and your hard work. And we'll be back again for our normal Plan Commission agenda. I believe our next meeting is on Monday, coming right up.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.